Urbanization is a growing phenomenon, and so is the consequent waste generation and its management. And this is where we anchor tonight's edition of the program. Good evening and welcome. One of the major environmental challenges confronting urban cities in Nigeria is solid waste management. This is despite plethora of policies and regulatory measures by state government authorities to put in place sustainable municipal waste collection and disposal method. Worthy of note is the fact that most Nigerian cities are inundated with slums, prompting increasing urban population and consequent generation of huge amount of solid wastes. The problem is becoming intractable as it is proving more difficult for many cities to cope with urbanization, pollution, and concomitant generation of huge garbage, apparently due to lifestyles and consumption patterns. Where waste collection is exclusive, we still record less than 50% efficiency in waste management, with exception of Lagos, Calabar, and possibly Abuja. Now, some observers believe that the core of the challenge are absence of inadequate policies and implementation, enabling legislation and environmentally stimulated society. Now, application of technology in solid waste management has been adopted in states like Lagos, Calabar, and perhaps a few others, where recycling plants have been established to convert wastes to products, targeting paper, plastics, electronic equipment, metals, and glass. But there is more to waste than the few just mentioned. Now, is there any gap between policy formulation, execution, and implementation which exacerbates the challenges of solid waste management in cities in Nigeria? Answer to this and many more questions will be sought from experts as we begin another edition of Weekend File. My name is Kirian Umayo. Let's do it again. The news is first. Now, an extraordinary session of the Conference of Heads of State and Government of the Community of Sahel Saharan States has ended in N'Djamena, Chad, with adoption of a revised treaty as well as a declaration on peace, security, and stability in the region. During the event, President Muhammadu Buhari made a case for wider cooperation amongst member countries towards checking the illegal flow of small arms into the hands of militia forces, bandits, and insurgents, now threatening human rights and internal security in Nigeria. State House correspondent Adam Sambo has that report.
Issues relating to peace, security, stability, and sustainable development dominated discussions at the conference, holding for the first time in 6 years under the chairmanship of the Chadian leader, President Idris Deby. President Muhammadu Buhari, who was amongst the heads of state and government of the community of Sahel Saharan states in attendance, worked closely with immediate neighbors in the last few years to stem the widespread availability of small arms and light weapons making their way into Nigeria. He told the leaders present during the closed session that recent developments have been very disturbing and therefore the urgent need for support from a wider cycle of countries towards curtailing the dangerous trend. And in view of the significance of SENSAD, as the organization is called, and the role it can play in furthering domestic security, President Buhari ordered the reinvigoration of Nigeria's interest and approved the payment of the backlog of unpaid funds.
We have to pay tribute to the President for attending this conference, fundamentally because they are adopting a very holistic approach towards addressing the core challenges of the insecurity bedeviling the region. We believe that in the not too distant future, Boko Haram, they will be consigned to the dustbin of history.
And I actually congratulate the head of states for taking it as a matter of priority to look at the security of the region. Is important, very, very important. And I'm happy that I've been part of it.
Clearly, Nigeria's presence is very important for SENSAD to really make the kind of impact that it wants to make. The organization was dying somewhat.
Highlights of the extraordinary conference includes the issuance of a 14-point resolution, adoption of a revised treaty, and a declaration committing member countries to peace and stability, as well as helping each other and cooperating in all fields in the context of solidarity and brotherhood. They also resolved to prevent the use of their territories for activities directed against the sovereign and territorial integrity of states of the community.
The organization had been more oriented towards an economic community and greater integration, but now they want to focus on security and sustainable development, because those are the areas of real challenge for the region.
The challenges within the Sahel Saharan region in terms of security is enormous, particularly of cross-border issues, the issue of proliferation of small arms and light weapons, smuggling of drugs, and also terrorism. So coming together, all these countries involved, I think 29 member countries, it's very important, particularly at this time.
The multinational joint task force is working at the Lake Chad region. When we have the Sahel Saharan state, the G5, with the combination of the two, we will have a real impact in the fighting of insurgency across our nation.
In the meantime, the conference has resolved to temporarily relocate the headquarters of the community from Libya to Chad due to security concerns, as well as the registration of its revised treaty with the United Nations and the African Union Commission. President Buhari has since returned to Abuja. Adamu Sambu, NTA News.
And President Muhammadu Buhari reminds parents of kidnapped Chibok schoolgirls in Borno State that he has still not forgotten their daughters who were kidnapped from their dormitory 5 years ago, precisely on April the 14th, 2014. A statement by the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, says President Buhari promised the parents when he met them at the beginning of his first term that he would bring their daughters back home. Although the government has so far succeeded in bringing back 107 of the girls, President Buhari says he will not rest until the remaining girls are reunited with their families, as diverse efforts are being intensified to source their release from Boko Haram captivity, including Leah Sharibu, who was also kidnapped from her school in Dapchi, Yobe State on February 19, 2018. On Leah Sharibu's abduction, the interlocutors have reported encouraging progress, which indicates that she will be soon reunited with her family. President Buhari also sent special greetings to the 106 girls sponsored by the Nigerian government to continue their studies at the American University of Nigeria, Yola, encouraging them to stay focused on becoming women who will inspire girls in Nigeria and around the world. Nigeria's Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, has told global investors who attended the 2019 World Bank and IMF Spring Meeting in Washington, D.C., that Nigeria is ready for business as it has improved significantly in the ease of doing business environment. At the Corporate Council on Africa, the minister said Nigeria is driving reforms in several sectors which will potentially impact private investors positively. She also spoke on government's cash management strategy.
We must make sure that we don't exceed our borrowing capacities, because the risks are very high. For us in Nigeria, we're still very much within our borrowing limits. As you know, today our total debt is 19.1% of our GDP. Our fiscal responsibility commitment is not to exceed 25% of our GDP, so we still have headroom. What we're doing is to increase our revenue generating capacity to ease the burden on debt service and also to improve our expenditure outlays. But in terms of the implementation of the ERGP, I hope in the next 4 years that we will be able to give ministers, heads of agencies, key targets, and also held them responsible for the delivery of those targets.
The Minister of Finance, along with the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Udoma, the Governor of Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, have been meeting with investors at the annual engagement to market investment potential across sectors of the Nigerian economy. And still from Washington, international economists have listed Nigeria as one of the key countries among emerging markets that will drive global growth from the third quarter of 2019. Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, made the revelation during a side event for investors at the 2019 spring meetings. Vivian Idebefo reports.
A delighted Emefiele, who took his time to share some of the positive vibes from the closed sessions of central bank governors, ministers of finance and international collaborators, disclosed that more than $5 billion have flowed back into the country, contrary to what obtained in previous election years.
The central bank and the federal government are open to foreign investors who are keen to support our efforts at unlocking the immense opportunities in our economy, knowing that it offers mutual gains to both the investors as well as Nigeria.
Intervention strategies such as the introduction of demand and supply management, as well as development finance, which increased lending to the SMEs, no doubt have improved the wealth of the rural communities and drastically reduced the 1.3 trillion naira annual import bill.
We will continue to do what we're doing, but at the same time, we still keep our eyes on the ball to see we'll continue to focus on the priority sectors of the economy.
And I believe we will sustain the progress going forward.
The governor assures investors that their investments will be duly protected by the authorities. In Washington, D.C., Vivian Itekwefo, NTA News.
And back home, there are indications that Nigeria will soon achieve sustainable production in the importation or reduction in the importation of petroleum products into the country. This is because the nation has begun rehabilitation of the refineries in Kaduna, Port Harcourt, and Warri. Amechi Piles reports that this was disclosed by the Group Managing Director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, at the ongoing Enugu International Trade Fair.
The Group Managing Director of the NNPC, Dr. Mekanti Barau's message to visitors at the fair was presented by the Chief Operating Officer, Refineries and Petrochemicals of the corporation. It was anchored on the corporation's renewed drive for value addition in its operations, which he explained informed the commitment to revamp the refineries for optimal production and delivery of petroleum products.
Where we actually are revitalizing our pipelines and depots across the country. That's the solution to ensure that you can get products inland without having everybody going to Lagos. So as we speak, like I mentioned, over 55 depots in the country are actually working and actual. From Port Harcourt Refinery, for example, we pump directly to Aba. From Aba, they pump elsewhere. So that's the solution. NNPC is focused on ensuring that the pipelines and depots are working actively.
He told guests at the corporation's special day at the Enugu International Trade Fair that the NNPC will begin the 210,000 barrel per stream Port Harcourt refinery. The Chief Operating Officer also announced plans by the NNPC to boost domestic and industrial gas consumption under its gas master plan. To make the Easter celebration pleasurable, he noted that the corporation has more than enough petroleum products at its 55 depots across the country and cautioned depot owners selling petrol above their official regulated pump price to desist from that illegal act.
And our role is to ensure that we can do what you just mentioned, which is to ensure that we get petroleum products across the country as effectively as possible and maintain at 145.
Very integrated, very organized, and very impressive. I would say they should keep it up.
High point of the event was the exchange of gifts between officials of the NNPC and ESIMA in Enugu. Amechi Piles, NTA News.
The Southeast youth leaders of the All Progressives Congress, APC, and other youth stakeholders in the zone have commended President Muhammadu Buhari and his wife Aisha for their efforts towards giving the youths their rightful position in the nation's polity. The youths gave the commendation at a meeting held in Oka, the Anambra State capital. Chinyere Fesi Okoye was there for us.
Rising from a closed-door meeting aimed at charting the way forward for APC, the Southeast Zonal leader, Mr. Odu Olisemeka Onyeka, on behalf of the youths, congratulates the president on his re-election, calling on the party leadership to ensure that there is reward mechanism for party loyalists. The meeting resolved to consult aggrieved stakeholders of the party for possible reconciliation.
Politics is a game of number. We need the numbers to ensure that we get what we want in future.
The meeting also reiterated the need for equity and fairness in zoning presiding officers at the National Assembly.
Ensure that every organ of the party is consulted before that is done. And when we talk of organs, we equally include the youth organ.
The Southeast youth leaders used the medium to thank President Buhari for the ongoing federal projects in the Southeast and appealed for speedy completion of the jobs. In Oka, Chinyere Fesi Okoye, NTA News.
Chairman, Presidential Committee on the Elimination of Drug Abuse, Brigadier General Mohammed Buba Marwa, has charged Nigerians to support President Muhammadu Buhari in his quest to end drug abuse in Nigeria. Joy Ken Ababwaya has the report.
Premier Medical Warehouse. The facility is where life-saving public health commodities, especially narcotic medicines, are stored for onward distribution to health facilities across the country. The Presidential Advocacy Committee for the Elimination of Drug Abuse team visited the facility to see firsthand the processes of receiving and dispensing these controlled medicines across the country. This is following information that narcotic medicines find their way illegally into the hands of drug abusers.
We want to determine if there are these type of leakages, what are the ways to block them? Because we are on the drug abuse call, and we want to limit the supply of these substances illegally.
The team assessed ledgers and other documents and were taken around the storage facilities.
And we have been properly educated today. We've seen the records, how they are kept. We are quite satisfied with the process.
One of the issues raised by the management of the central stores is the lack of a drug revolving fund, which they say is responsible for the current lack of Schedule 1 narcotic medicines important for the treatment of trauma, HIV, and cancer patients. In Lagos, Joy Ken Abapuya, NTA News.
The federal government is committed to resolving the problems and hardships caused by insurgency in the Northeast. The reassurance came from the Presidential Committee on the Northeast Initiative during its strategic session on the Mambila 3,050 megawatts hydroelectric power project's local content working group in Abuja. Timothy Yusuf reports.
The Federal Executive Council on the 30th of August 2017 approved the construction of the 3,050 megawatts Mambila hydroelectric power project in order to chart a course for the development of the Northeast. The project's contract provides for 70% foreign procurement and 30% local content. This meeting in Abuja is towards ensuring that the project takes off on a sound footing, with special reference to the 30% local content.
We are making sure that every available resource at the disposal of the government and at the disposal of the Northeast is made available to the completion of this project. So it is entirely feasible for the project to go a long way within the administration of Muhammadu Buhari.
Local content aspect of the project is guided by the executive order of Mr. President, Executive Order number 5.
The realization of the Mambila project, according to members of the working group, will restore development to the Northeast zone where socio-economic activities were retarded as a result of insurgency.
The present administration is committed towards realization of Mambila Hydro, and you know the project is critical to the economy of this country.
This working group is also expected to fine-tune the Presidential Committee on Northeast Initiative's terms of references for the approval of the group. In Abuja, Timothy Yusuf, NT News.
The internally displaced persons at the Zungeru permanent camp have appealed to the federal government for urgent payment of compensation meant for structures to enable them build permanent accommodation at the designated sites, as the camp is not conducive for living. Mukhtar Abubakar Uowo reports that the appeal was made during the visit of the federal government subcommittee on distribution of relief materials to orphanages and IDPs nationwide.
The internally displaced persons in Zungeru are victims of last year's flooding, whom, after staying in a temporary camp at the Central Primary School Zungeru, were moved to a permanent camp built by the National Emergency Management Agency about 3 months ago. The IDPs decried their living condition at the camp as 2 households share a tent. They express worry over the next rainy season.
We need the federal government to give us our compensating money to start building our house because of rainy season.
Meanwhile, the federal government subcommittee on distribution of relief materials to orphanages and IDPs nationwide has visited them for identification and verification. The subcommittee has also visited the Niger State Orphanage as well as the home of the physically challenged persons for further distribution of relief materials.
There are so many quantum of rice all over our warehouses nationwide. In order not for these items to go bad, the federal government decided that these items should be given to the needy.
The relief materials expected to be distributed include rice, clothing, and other food items seized by the Nigeria Customs Service. In Mina, Mukhtar Abubakar, NTA News.
On a sad note from Gombe State, Fatia Awal Abba reports that an unconfirmed number of people have died following a petroleum tanker explosion earlier today, while many others have been injured.
The petrol tanker explosion, which occurred along Gombe-Maiduguri bypass road around 12 noon, was due to brake failure. The tank burst shortly after falling under the bridge, thereby disengaging its contents and spread fire to nearby houses. An eyewitness said the tanker driver was on his way to upload petrol to a filling station in Gombe metropolis when he suddenly lost brake and lost control, thereby crushing motorbikes, tricycles and people along the roadside.
When the accident happened is kill people very too much. So when this accident happened, I'm here, I'm looking with my eyes, people that die too much, some that children, some that have small pickings in their hands.
Those who sustained injury were rushed to Federal Teaching Hospital Gombe for medical attention. In Gombe, Fatia Awal Abba, NTA News.
Nigeria's former president of Court of Appeal and the Galadima Katsina district head of Malumfashi, Justice Mama Nasir, is dead. He died at the Federal Medical Center Katsina after a protracted illness. He survived by 3 wives, 13 children, many grandchildren, including Nasir, Justice Nairo Nasir, and Abdulkadir Nasir and Daja, a one-time National Assembly member. He was buried at Malumfashi, Katsina State, with hundreds of relations and associates in attendance. Now, and the late Justice Mama Nasir is associated with a humble personality. Ruth Aguele gives us more insight into the personality of the late president of the Court of Appeal.
The main reason I want to talk is to talk for you. If you look at yourselves here, we form a reasonable representation of Nigerians. If you despise yourself, we don't say that I say it for you. So we have a duty and the honor to accept the responsibility given for us serious and important responsibility that we help build our great nation. If you think you come here to destroy your future, you are making a terrible mistake. Tomorrow is for the Almighty.
A sad loss to the nation. A man who has left an indelible mark. One-time president of the Court of Appeal and district head of Malumfashi in Kaduna State, Justice Nasir died this afternoon at the Federal Medical Center, Kaduna, after a protracted illness. Justice Nasir was born in 1929 and attended Kaduna College, where he obtained the West African School Certificate in 1947, and later attended the University of Ibadan, where he obtained a certificate in Latin. He proceeded to the Council of Legal Education in London for his bachelor's degree in law in 1956 and was called to English bar that same year. On his return to Nigeria, he was appointed a Crown Counsel in 1956, and in 1961 he was appointed as Minister of Justice, Northern Nigeria, a position he held for 5 years before he became the Director of Public Prosecution, Northern Region in 1967. The same year, he was appointed Solicitor General, North Central. Late Justice Nasir held the position for 7 years before he was appointed to the bench of the Supreme Court of Nigeria in 1975. And in 1978, he was appointed President, Court of Appeal. He held the position for another 7 years until his retirement in 1992. To ascend the throne of Galadima of Kaduna and was turbaned on May 9, 1992. No doubt, the late Justice Nasir has left a great legacy that he would be remembered for, especially for his selfless service to humanity and the nation at large. May his gentle soul rest in peace. In Abuja, Ruth Aguela, NTA News.
Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has described the death of the former president of the Court of Appeal, Justice Muhammad Nasir, as not only a loss to the judiciary, but the country at large. A statement by the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, says the late Justice Nasir belonged to a generation of judges and justices who perceived public office as an opportunity to offer selfless service to the country and its people. President Buhari described the late justice as a man who lived a modest life, who was incredibly humble, honest and patriotic. According to the president, Justice Nasir was selfless during his years of service as he built a solid and impeccable record of integrity, which is the greatest asset any individual should leave behind. The president has directed that a government delegation be sent to condole with the family, government and people of Kaduna State for the loss of this illustrious member of the Kaduna Emirate Council. And you are watching Weekend File on the network service of the NTA. It is a fact that improper collection and disposal of solid waste can spell environmental catastrophe. Tonight, we deliberate on urban cities and the challenges of waste management. We'll be right back.
Marketing of broadcast media products requires special skills which can only be acquired through training and experience. NTA TV College Jos is therefore organizing an intensive 3-week course on modern trends in broadcast media marketing. The course will equip participants with necessary skills to deal with contemporary marketing challenges and competition in the broadcast media. It is an essential course for marketers in the broadcast media to sharpen their skills and improve their capacities. Date, 23rd April to 10th May 2019. Venue, NTA Television College Refuge Jos. Course fee, 100,000 Naira per participant, accommodation inclusive. For more inquiries, please contact us on 0803 314 4383 or 0806 980 9807. NTA TV College Jos, training you to be the best you want to be.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity.
Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous. Whether you do it for fun or for political gains, real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
Well, we thank you for staying with us. Now, to our correspondence report. From Abuja, like other parts of the country, Abuja, the city center, has had its own fair share of challenges associated with unhygienic environmental practices. In this report, Hakimat Aliyu takes us through some of these emerging environmental challenges in the Federal Capital Territory and how relevant authorities are responding.
World. The demographic movement of people to Abuja, alongside many industrial and commercial activities, accounts for huge tons of waste generation, with the central dump site recording a rise from 151,232.6 tons in 2010 to 244,743.94 tons in 2018.
The city has been planned for not quite the size that we have been seeing for now. The batches and that they have been creating all over the city, all those that are coming are now settling in where they are not supposed to be, and then that leads to open defecation, urination, sleeping on the streets.
It was also observed that the interaction of people with their immediate environment, such as felling of trees, bush burning, indiscriminate dumping of refuse, all have serious implications on the landscape, environmental aesthetics, and atmospheric well-being, among which is the removal of vegetation cover, causing high temperature, as lately experienced in the nation's capital city.
Vegetation covers are being removed by people who are looking for land for farming, people who are also exploiting the natural forest for timber.
However, to address the emerging environmental challenges in the Federal Capital Territory, the Abuja Environmental Protection Board, AEPB, in January 2019, commenced the review of its Act Number 10 of 1997 for a cleaner and sustainable environment. In Abuja, Hakimat Aliyu, NTA News.
And from Abuja to Lagos, the center of excellence, which is reputed to generate over 13,000 tons of waste per day. However, high commercial and other human activities increase this daily pile-up in the metropolis, spilling over to the marine. Jennifer Igo reports that in spite of strategies to manage the endless stream of solid waste in Lagos, heaps of refuse and indiscriminate disposal keep increasing.
In the 1990s, Lagos had an ugly reputation for being one of the dirtiest cities in Africa as a result of refuse dumps that literally lined most roadsides, highways, and neighborhoods. From 1999, the state government adopted a holistic approach to waste management that changed the dingy status quo of the state. Private sector participation, PSP, and regulations by the Lagos State Waste Management Authority helped in the door-to-door collection of waste for a fee. The state government subsidized payment for very low-income areas. The strides the megacity achieved in waste management suffered a setback when it shifted from its PSP door-to-door waste collection, the use of its transfer loading station that reduced waste transfer time to dump sites, and the regulatory role of Waste Management Agency.
The state government has a reason to have a rethink being reviewed to allow Loma take charge of his role of the regulatory agency and also to allow the social investors, which are the PSP, to actually continue their own role as household waste collectors.
Experts say majority of waste materials in Lagos are plastics that are non-biodegradable and most times clog drainage channels and subsequently end up in the lagoon, seas and ocean.
Fish, they could bioaccumulate in the body of the fish, and these are the things we also feed on, which would lead to all kinds of these.
Waste to wealth programs by the state government and others in the private sector are helping to recycle waste.
Bottles that we have, the covers are used as much as when we crush them to produce pallets, they now end up becoming things like packers, dustbins, even the hangers that we are using in our homes.
The state is out to create more social investments that will turn waste to wealth. In Lagos, Jennifer Igwe, NTA News.
Thank you, Jennifer. There's no gainsaying the fact that solid waste management is the most pressing environmental challenge that urban and rural areas in Nigeria are faced with. Ijoma Ugoke hints at a peculiar environmental challenge in Enugu State and responds to them.
This issue is being compounded by increasing human and vehicle activities in the state, as well as the fact that the agency saddled with the responsibility, ESWAMA, has not improved on the existing platforms and methods to evacuate and collect waste.
The cities in Nigeria has what is called sanitary landfill system, whereby all the waste that are generated by different households and institutional development and multiple agencies are aggregated and carted away to these dump sites where resource can be recycled. But what you see is an enlarged dump site whereby you aggregate both degradable and non-degradable.
It's giving us a very serious concern that the citizens or people residing in Enugu are not complying with the practice that is ongoing. For example, we have one. We experience from time to time non-bagging of refuse, because here in Enugu we have this practice of you have to bag your refuse from your household or from the source of generation of the solid waste, bag them properly, take them to the nearest dumpster. From that point, our trust goes there to collect them.
It has been also of waste to wealth, which every state is expected to key into. The idea to provide machinery that will help crush the waste and convert to other use. But those machines, experts say, are not on ground in Enugu State.
Plastic industries make use of broken plastics. Bottle industry make use of bottle disting, and as well as metal industries make use of scrap metals for recycling. You see absolutely that even if 80% of waste are generated in the city to the dump site, that 80% goes back into agricultural production as well as into other secondary industries for as semi-raw materials.
They, however, advocated organized and systemic dumping and channeling of waste to ensure disposal with attention to accepted public health and environmental safeguards. In Enugu, Ijoma Ugoke, NTA News.
And Kaduna is next on our lineup. Converting solid waste to wealth is a major, and how they are addressing the challenge is what Ibrahim Bello Gunda tells us in this package.
Waste generation and disposal are recurring features in residential neighborhoods, markets, school premises, business areas and cities. In Kaduna State, the government is collaborating with environmental agencies to evacuate solid waste to designated dump sites, clean up the streets, and seal drainages to ensure safe and conducive environment. The major obstacle to the initiative, however, is the poor attitude of waste generators towards disposal.
So what they should do is to be mindful of their environment, taking all the waste to the designated places meant for dumping of refuse. Especially along the major street, we have receptacles that people are expected to be dumping their waste. And indiscriminate dumping of waste is unacceptable.
Environmental experts observe that though Kaduna State is doing well in terms of evacuation of refuse, there is the need to do more, especially in turning solid waste to wealth.
So the waste shouldn't be put in together. It should be separated and be segregated. So as for Kaduna State, it will create employment for the state, and it will fetch something to what? That will boost the economy of the state as a whole.
Suleiman Zubairu noted that it is very important to sensitize the public on the numerous advantages of keeping their environment free of trash, especially polythene bags, that are non-biodegradable, which can lead to flooding in addition to applying sanctions to violators of environmental laws. In Kaduna, Ibrahim Bello Gunda, NTA News.
All right, you're still watching Weekend File on the network service of the NTA. We would like to thank our correspondents for their input. So when we return, presently, we'll engage our guest, who happens to be Adeolu Odushote, an environmental engineer, who will be with me in just a moment. Stay with us.
Jennifer, don't tell me you're still looking for chapters for your expo.
What expo? I'm reading to pass.
Yeah, right.
I beg, we all know even if you study, the surest way to graduate in this school now to do a rejo.
Or better still, we hook the lecturers, Abby.
No, that's a thing of the past. I would not get a certificate I cannot defend. I would not be a burden to the nation or the society by fixing or buying certificates that does not add value to my life. This is the era of change, and change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
You can follow us on all our social media platforms: Facebook at NTA Network News, Instagram at NTA Network, Twitter at NTA News Now, YouTube at NTA News Online. Or visit www.nta.ng. For live streaming, visit www.nta.ng/live. Now, you can stay updated on the go, be it on your TV, iPhone, laptop, or iPad, or download the NTA mobile application from your Play Store or App Store. NTA, you can beat the rich.
And with me now is engineer Adeolu Odushote. He's, of course, an environmental engineer. He's joining me on this week's edition of Weekend File. Good evening and welcome, Engineer Odushote.
Kieran, good evening. Good to be here.
You know, from the reports that you watched, you must have appreciated, the level of poor solid waste management in Nigeria. Even Lagos, that Nigerians have been commending over the years for tackling this menace. It does seem that the solid waste management is overwhelming the city. What's your take on what you've watched so far?
You'd remember for the report from Lagos, reference was made to 1999 when the public sector participation started. And then somewhere along the line, rather recently, it turned out that that process kind of got put in the back burner and something else was being tried, which is looking like it's not really working as the kind of thing that instigated public sector participation at that time. Now, the idea is to ensure that in waste management, you have a cycle that approximates nature. The main problem about waste management is grappling with the basic law of matter. Every waste is a material that the law of matter says cannot be created or destroyed. It could be manufactured, it could be moved around, but understanding it makes it clear that you don't wake up one day and it looks like a spirit or something just drop materials on the streets. They must have been put there by people. They must have been moved there by some human influence. And they're not destroyed also. They must be moved by some planned program that ensures that, the management of waste is really done properly. PSP, as it was called at that time, is one good example of trying to grapple with how materials that eventually are called wastes get generated and get disposed. If you truncate somewhere along the line the continuity of the flow of the material, you have a problem because the things will not move themselves away. And that is the kind of thing that we learn from in the Lagos experience that also tells us about how generally people should think about what they are doing to create that backlog, as it were, that is stopping what should be the flow of material, started as a generated waste to the point where it's properly disposed.
Now, waste management is completely under the purview of state government, because we're talking about cities in Nigeria. And one wonders, if this has become so overwhelming that it cannot be tackled. No one state can, boast of, efficiency in solid waste management. Are there budgetary provisions, allocations for this kind of project in states? I don't know for sure, but I'm thinking that if this is a sector where a government, makes provision for annually, that definitely we're talking about policy and the implementation mechanism and what have you. So what have you observed, knowing that cities in Nigeria are not properly managed when it comes to waste management for a very long time?
Kirian, there's no state you go to that would not talk about some Ministry of Environment. And for each one, there is a program about policy towards environmental management, making budgetary allocations to it, and establishing some institutional frameworks, legal, social, that will make sure that these things work. And it can't just be left at the state management level only. That's why we have also the federal ministry that is involved in environment. There's also, even at the local government, which is where it really matters, because that's where the tire hits the road. People should be involved in making sure that things happen. But as we have it, so many of these things are established, perhaps at times on paper, and it requires that there is more effort, more coordination within ministries, across ministries, because when you're talking about waste, you cannot just leave it to a sector only. It's something about our lives. Every action, every part of our lives would generate waste. And that means that you cannot just leave it to say the Ministry of Environment would be involved and would solely be involved in making sure that the things are solved. It has to cut across education, social programming, finance, and all the other things that make the cycle get closed. So you now ask yourself, how are these different points of action connecting with one another? And even in the Ministry of Environments, across the national umbrella and in the different states, how are these things really getting coordinated? Quite some money gets spent. But if you do not handle things in the place where it really matters, it's like really hitting the jugular, as it were, where when you get it right there, other things start to flow. If you do not do that, it's just going to be cosmetic. I've been in situations where I'd seen commissioners in states go sit down and watch people just clearing refuse dumps and so on. And every time I see that, I said, what a waste of effort, because that's not what should happen, basically. You should be talking about dealing with things more fundamentally. The awareness of the people, the education of the people, social engineering and programming, and what takes people to be involved. And not get to a point where it looks like, let's just throw it anyhow. Throw these things anywhere. Some people will be responsible for it. There's still a lot to be done. Money properly channeled in the places where it would definitely affect the solution of these problems we're talking about.
Actually, your comment now just made me to realize one aspect, that I'd like you to also look into. How stimulated is the Nigerian society with respect to refuse collection and disposal from our different family units? Some dispose waste at undesignated places, in pitches, in fact, in gutters and what have you. You talked about education. Yes. Where should that start? Because from what is on ground at the moment, we don't seem to understand the concept of waste collection, waste management, of course, waste recycling.
Right.
Where are we going to start?
On the scale of 1 to 10, I would put the engagement of the Nigerian society, the people, at 3. I've been in societies where I've studied and I've watched these things happen. I worked at the International Global Environmental Strategies Office in Japan in 2000, where all this quest on international level started. And I saw people in Japan integrate and connect with managing waste to the point where today I can put them at 9, the scale of 9, where I put Nigeria presently at 3. So you understand what I mean? The Japanese wakes up every morning and lives through the day integrating the use of waste into his life. He knows where to drop plastic, where to drop paper, where to drop bottles, and so on. He knows when to carry out each of these materials for disposal. It makes it very easy for recycling. Because in the use of materials, and I like the introduction you gave at the beginning of the program, Kirian, where you were talking about watching our life cycle, and our lifestyles. You know, you're talking about how do I handle material and use things that make me avoid generating waste and make me also reduce them where it cannot be avoided. And later, you now talk about when these things have been done, reusing materials, recycling materials, treating materials, and so on. These are things you bring into the psyche of the people that make them start to respond, to waste management, even with that kind of engagement. It takes a lot of awareness, a lot of education, right from school level, primary school level. What wonder would it be if we have our children, 5, 6, coming home and saying, I know where to throw this paper. I know where to throw this bottle. And they look at adults, they can tell them, Daddy, don't do that. Do you see how on the streets, you are going behind some cars and different things are flying out
from
of the
end
window?
of car windows,
Bottles,
banana
plastics,
spills and what have you.
And you just ask yourself, who is going to pack these things after you? In countries where they've gone beyond that level 3, to higher levels, not even 9, you see people at times stop those who throw these things out and they say, your car is not moving. Take back what you dropped there. When we get to that stage, we start to understand that people are engaged.
Let me ask you, what should be the role of the private sector in this? And of course, the government can, the private sector may not really make any appreciable input without an enabling environment which should be created by state government.
Right.
And in this connection, it does seem that many states who have engaged the private sector it's also not working.
True.
There. Lagos, for instance, that we mentioned that. You saw a report. You saw garbage everywhere in Lagos. Of course, I know that in some Lagos, like mainland and what have you, Victoria Island and what have you, may be clean, but the greater part of Lagos, you can see just refuse dumps everywhere. What should state governments do?
Many of our efforts in the big cities, unfortunately, presently, could just be termed as cosmetic. The main highways, the front streets, and so on, where the people really live, reveal how we are. And you go there and you are seeing things in gutters, on the streets and all that, open defecation and wrong use of water and all those things. And when you talk about the involvement of the private sector, it all depends on who you are looking at here. Private sector participation for waste management, many of them just see it as business. Let's clear the much that we can clear. Let's keep getting the money that government can make us able to get in this business. And that's where it stops. But we're talking about people who are interested in really bringing proper waste management to be part of the life of the people. So we are talking about other parts of private sector that includes people who produce, the different people who make the products and all that. They want to be interested in how will, from cradle to grave, the products be taken care of. When I release the products, how am I thinking of packaging? How would people handle what I'm packaging with? It will make people start to think of what the right packaging is actually, and how these things will be handled through the life of the product to the point where these things are, disposed. So it's so very important to make every part of society, including private sector, see that this thing concerns all of us. And each one should be interested in playing his part to make sure that it works. It's working in other parts of the world. It's working in Africa. Go to Rwanda, go to Ghana. There are strides
even in
that
Senegal,
have been made. And all these other places.
See all these,
it's working in some parts in Nigeria presently, but we need to really integrate the approach to making these solutions come.
All right, at this point, let us thank you very much for sharing your thoughts, and your expertise on this very issue. I was actually going to ask about the role of the environmental health officers, registration council, and all other, regulatory agencies along the line. There are many, but we don't seem to be having a feel of what they're doing. Thank you so much, Engineer Adolu Odishete.
Thank you, Karen.
It's my pleasure.
Nice to be with you tonight.
Adolu Odishete is an environmental engineer. This is Weekend File. I'll be back very shortly. And in our sports update tonight, Nigerians react to Super Eagles Group B placing in 2019 and the Africa